Shalom Aleichem, good morning. Welcome to our viewers on Torah Anytime, and even our viewers from Italy today. The Shira is sponsored in the breakfast, which I guess is coming soon. The Louis Nishmas, Moshe ben Marcella, by our dear friend, Rabbi Daniel Nissim, Mitzvah Hashem, should have Elias Neshama. Also, a Mazel Tov to Rabbi Reuven Jacob, who's not here yet, I think, for his granddaughter. 2 weeks ago, he has a granddaughter. Her name is Liel. And a special welcome to our friends from Teaneck, New Jersey. Rabbi Tiger and his son, Mitzvah Hashem, should make the best out of your trip here. Get spiritually charged. And Mitzvah Hashem, come back real soon. Or, even better, don't leave. So we have some music today in the shir. Some riddles, some stories, halachic shaylos, and Parnassa matters in Mitzvah Hashem, an exciting shir. We start with Az Yashir. Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael. The Gemara says in Megillah, Daf Yud Amud Beis, and Hedin Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. The Malachim wanted to say Shira, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no! Stop. Bikshu Malachi Asher Asloim Shira. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Maise Yadai Tovin Bayam? My creatures are drowning, and you want to say Shira? Is that the time to sing? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, go. And yet, when Klal Yisrael says Shira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, bring it on. Why not? Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael. Is it time to say Shira now or not? If it's not, no one should be saying any Shira. And if it is, everybody should be saying Shira. So how come the Malachim don't get permission and Klal Yisrael do? Strange, no? Bothered me for years. Yesterday I saw an answer from Klei Chemda. Klei Chemda says, what are you asking? What's the question? Why do Klal Yisrael decide to say Shira now? Because they were saved. Vayihi li Yeshua. To me, it was a salvation, so I'm singing. I'm not singing because of the downfall of someone else, but the Malachim were not in any harm's way. If they were singing for the downfall of Mitzrayim, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says no. And with that you understand the difference between a Yid and a Goy. When Balak has a problem with Klal Yisrael, what does he do? He hires Bilam, come, and I want you to curse Klal Yisrael. That's not the way we do things. When we have a problem, what do? We look up and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, save us. Make us stronger. Get us out of here. But we don't ask for the downfall of someone else. We just ask for chizuk for us. But the Goy, when he has a problem, curse Klal Yisrael. Why don't you call Bilam and say, give us a bracha that we should be strong? We strengthen our army. No, the Goy looks to hurt others. And for that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when others are being hurt, when others are drowning, this is not the time to say Shira. However, Klal Yisrael can say Shira because they are just celebrating the fact that they were saved. So there's all kinds of expressions of tefillah. Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael, it is a Shira. But there's also a tefillah. There is Hallel. There is Bracha. How is Shira different? Tefillah, you mispalel, you daven. A bracha, you say a bracha. You mevarech. Hallel, you're mehaleling. You praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How is Shira different? Rashi says, on Az Yashir, Allah belibo sheyashir Shira. That means Shira, as opposed to the other forms of prayer, comes from the heart. The Maharal says, Ksheyagia simcha belev hatzadikim, when the tzadikim are happy, miyad, immediately, alta shira belibam, their heart starts singing. And that is how Shira is different than the other forms of prayer. How does that work? What does that mean? There was a very big Hasidic Rebbe, his name was Reb Uri of Strelisk, the Strelisk Hasidim. And when he passed away, he left no one like him. So his Hasidim were left in the darkness. They felt like orphans and they didn't know what to do. They looked for another Rebbe. So they started traveling. They went from town to town and from village to village, seeking what they lost, until they reached the place of Rebbe Yisrael of Rozhin, the Rozhin Rebbe, and they found, this is a Rebbe we would like to be associated with. So they came in and they said, Rebbe, we would like to become your Hasidim. He said, gladly, with open arms, welcome. But you know, you may have a problem. Why is that? It is known that the Strelisk Hasidim would daven with a very exaggerated or at least to the onlooker, external expressions. They would clap their hands, they would sing, they would stamp their feet, they would yell in davening. Davening was like an earthquake. By the Reginer Hasidim, the lips moved, but the voice cannot be heard. Very, very silent. So the Reginer says to the Hasidim, we daven in a different way than you're accustomed to. And they said, we know. Rebbe, we promise, don't worry. We will stay quiet, no problem. You're welcome. First Shabbos, they stayed. It was Shabbos, Parnassa, Beshalach, Shabbos Shira. The Hasidim stand in the back. And in Birkos HaShachar, somehow they're able to contain themselves. Korbanos, they're already starting to move. Shabbos Shira, Az Yashir. Sukkei de Zimra, they're already moving. And when it came time to Az Yashir, they started dancing and yelling and clapping and stamping their feet. Az Yashir, Parshas, Shabbos Shira. After davening, they felt terrible. They promised the tzaddik, they promised the Rebbe that they will remain sound, and they didn't. They felt terrible. Motzei Shabbos, they came into the Rebbe. They took off their shoes like a person who's in nidui, and they came in, and the Rebbe says, how can I help you? They say, we came to ask Mechila. Please be Moichelas. Moichel for what? And he says, we promised you last week that we will be quiet the whole davening. First Shabbos, we weren't able to keep our promise. We were so loud, but what can we do? It's Shabbos Shira, but we apologize. Please be Moichelas. And the Reginer said, but we never spoke about that. I said, yes, we did, just a few days ago. He said, no. What I meant is, when you start clapping, when you start yelling, when you stamp your feet, that I said no. We said, don't do that in time of davening. But when your hands clap on their own, when your feet start stamping, you find your feet start stamping on the ground, when you start yelling out of your heart, we never spoke about that, that's not a problem. And that is how Shira is different than the other forms of davening. Because Shira comes from the heart as opposed to the other forms, the Tefillah, the Bracha, and the Hallel. There's a Gemara that appears twice in Shas. Eruvin Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, and in Gittin Vav Amud Beis, the Gemara says, two opinions, Elu va'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim. Very strange. How can you say but two opposing opinions, they're both Divrei Elokim Chaim? Kosher! No, Treif, you're both right. How can you both right? Either it's kosher or it's not. It's tameh or it's tar or it's possible or not. How does it work? It's a beautiful explanation from the Torah Tmima. And he explains, sometimes you listen to the Philharmonic, you listen to a band, to a choir, and it's so nice, it's so moving, it's inspirational. But if you isolate the instruments, or you isolate the sounds, the voices of the people, it's not so impressive. This guy speaks like this, this guy speaks like this. And you hear the drums just alone, it's not so impressive. Only when they come together, the different types of sounds, then they form the beautiful sound that inspires you. So that is how when HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at the Bes Medrash and he sees that each one says something else, but they're all doing it for the same cause. They're doing it as if in one band. They're doing it L'Shem Shamayim. That's the most beautiful music there is to the ears, as if of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why Elu va'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim, because when you say it, in fact, L'Shem Shamayim, it is Divrei Elokim Chaim. That's a musical explanation. I think Pshat, it's easy to understand based on the Arizal, because the Arizal says that today, in this world, we paskin like Beis Hillel, but in the future, we'll paskin like Beis Shammai. So in fact, Elu va'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim. So after all that about music, should one sing while davening? Good idea, bad idea. We see the Regina were very quiet, the Streliks were very loud. We know different shuls that you go to, some people like singing, some people don't. Is there an Indian to sing? Is there an Indian to remain silent? Rabbi say, what are you saying? The Levim. Are you a Levi? So the Levim should sing. Those who are not Levim, in a shul that there are no Levim,
like Zeiche.
Zeiche to the Levim. Are you a Levi? So the Levi should sing. So you partially should sing. Half of the tefillah you should sing. Sefer Hasidim. One of the Rishonim, Rabbi Bitachon, Siman Kuf Nun Ches. He says, find a tune that you like. Go find tunes, and use them in davening. And he says it depends what you're davening. If you're requesting divrei bakasha, shaila, use a tune that prepares the heart. I guess a little slower type of a tune. If you're saying divrei shevach, you're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do so with a tune that gladdens your heart. Sefer Hasidim. Rabbeinu Ben Ishchai, in his Sefer Bnayahu, on Brachos Davav Amud Beis, the Gemara says, B'makom rina, sham tehe tefila. Rina is joy, rina is singing. Why is it so important to sing in davening? Says the Ben Ishchai, Mamish HaPeleh. There are some prosecuting agents up there that as soon as you open your mouth in prayer and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for whatever it is that you want, they come and they start bad-mouthing you. But when they see Klal Yisrael coming into a shul and starting to sing, they say, surely they're not davening now, because who would sing at the time of davening? They came to the shul in order to sing, and they leave. They don't realize, yes, we came to daven. So that pushes away the prosecuting agents that are there in order to prevent you from davening. So he says, keep going. Go and sing, because then this way the prosecuting agents won't be able to know what you're doing. They will leave the shul and you will be able to daven, and in Mitzvah Hashem your prayers will be accepted. So now let's talk a little about Parnassa.
Some shuls will sing from the beginning of davening, and some don't sing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Eilu va'eilu divrei Eloikim chaim. Nahara nahara upashte ude'avid kemar avid ude'avid kemar avid. In English, to each his own. Whatever excites a person. So Parshas Haman, Jacob, we wished you before. It's tremendous, hearty mazel tov, and tremendous nachas de kedusha imitation from Liel and from all the rest. So Parnassa matters. Yes, it does. Parshas Haman is, we all know it's a segula for Parnassa. I think we mentioned it last year. And Parshas Haman is all about Bitachon. And when you have Bitachon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showers you with Parnassa. So let's deal a little with Parnassa. The Gemara says in Soita Daf Beis Amud Aleph, and again in Sanhedrin Chav Beis Amud Aleph, that the zivuk, finding a shidduch, is so hard like Kriyas Yam Suf. Parnassa is so hard like Kriyas Yam Suf. A famous question, and I think we mentioned a few other ideas last year. Is it really hard for Kodesh Baruch Hu to split the sea? What do you mean? Kriyas Yam Suf, it's so hard like it was. Was it really hard for Kodesh Baruch Hu to split the sea? Kodesh Baruch Hu created the sea. If he can create the sea, he can obviously split it. So what's the big deal? So is it really hard? Many answers. Mistama 5,742, but we're going to say one. What happened there before the splitting of the sea? Chazal says, the water was right in front of them. The Egyptians to the right, to the left, to the back, even plains right above them. Where do we go? The split didn't split until somebody actually jumped in. Machlokes, who was the first one to jump in? Was it Nachshon ben Aminadav or the tribe of Binyamin? But Lemaise, only when they jumped in and the water reached all the way up to their nose, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed the miracle, which means first you have to do the Ishtadlus. Only when you do the Ishtadlus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and says, I'll complete the job for you. So was it hard for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to split the sea? The actual tearing of the water was not hard at all. What was as if hard to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the fact that he had to wait until we, on our part, from here, down here, do the Ishtadlus. So is it with a person's match. Lichoira, a person should stay home and say, listen, it was already decreed. The beginning of Soita we learned, 40 days before Yetzirah Savlad, it was already decreed. A baskol comes out from Shemaim and says, this guy's going to marry this girl. So why do I have to do anything? I don't have to do Ishtadlus. That's what's as if hard about the shidduch, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to intervene until a person actually goes on a date. Without his ishtadlus, it doesn't work. And so it is with Parnassa. Until a person doesn't do something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't help him. So as if it's hard for HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he has to wait for our ishtadlus, but from down here. However, if we do need ishtadlus, how much ishtadlus is necessary? The $1 million question. Should you work 25 hours a day, getting up 1 hour earlier? Or, the minimal possible. How does that work? So Beis Halevi, Parshas Miketz writes, mamish, an unbelievable thing. Mishemarbe beishtadlus, one who does too much ishtadlus, his punishment will be that they would make him do even more ishtadlus, and his parnassa is not going to come unless he does a lot of ishtadlus, because after all, that's the path that he chose for himself. And as long as a person minimizes the ishtadlus and increases his bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help him more. So it seems that one is allowed to work on his midas bitachon and work less, not because he's lazy, not because he doesn't like to work, because he really wants to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Chazon Ish, in one of his letters, in Igos HaChazon Ish, writes a fascinating thing. He says, since the Geder of Ishtadlus, what exactly is Ishtadlus, how is it defined, is not clear to us. Do you have to work 2 hours a day, 14 hours, how does it work? Therefore, he says, my attitude towards Ishtadlus is kulish, sonen. And therefore I hold, says the Chazon Ish, that a Ben Torah, his Ishtadlus is tefillah. If you're in business, you're in business. You have to conduct yourself the way it is done outside, out there in the business world. But if you are Ben Torah, the real Ishtadlus is tefillah, because lemaise, that's where everything happens. That's where everything is decreed. I'm not sure if I once mentioned here. Somebody once came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and asked him, do you need to do Ishtadlus for Parnassa? Reb Chaim says, sure. He says, so how come you don't do any Ishtadlus? Reb Chaim says, of course I do. Says, no, you don't. We see you every day. You sit here and you're learning and you're learning and you're learning and you're learning. He says, no, I also do Ishtadlus. He says, you do Ishtadlus? Do you run in the middle of the night? You're a lawyer somewhere? You have a store? What do you mean Ishtadlus? What Ishtadlus do you do? And Reb Chaim says, no, I do. He says, how much Ishtadlus do you do? He says, 2 days a year. 2 days a year? What is that? And Reb Chaim says, yeah, 2 days davening on Rosh Hashanah. Because lemaise, kol mezonoisav shel adam ksuvim loy, me Rosh Hashanah ve'ad Rosh Hashanah. Gemara in Beis Daf Tet Zayin. Everything is decreed on Rosh Hashanah. So that's the real Ishtadlus. That's what the Chazon Ish is basically saying. For a Ben Torah, the real Ishtadlus is tefillah.
What we know from, for example, the way Yaakov Avinu lived. How does it fit in with this? Like Yaakov Avinu said to Lavan that he was with the sheep in the fields, in the cold, winter, dry sleep from his eyes. Yaakov Avinu seems to have been doing, to my limited understanding, a lot of his stadlers in order to support his family.
What did he do before that? Where was he for 14 years? What type of ishtadlus did he do? How much? Didn't sleep at night. Not even one night. Ve'isau. Meaning? That's what we said before. That's what's kashe in Kriyas Yam Suf, because they have to start the ishtadlus. The Rambam takes this Yaakov and he calls it Yaakov HaTzadik. The only time I think the Rambam uses the language Yaakov HaTzadik. And at the end of Hilchos Schirus in Poyalim, he says one should learn from the honesty, the way he conducted himself, Yaakov Avinu, because he says what he says to Lavan over there. So I guess Yaakov Avinu wants to teach us both worlds. On one hand, when you're immersed in Torah, that's 24/7, not even sleeping one night. But when you have to work, and apparently he had to work, so you do it 100% with 100% honesty. Somebody, Rizal, you want to say something?
Or how to understand what the Torah should do is. When one knows he has done too much or too little.
According to the Rambam, 3 hours. But the real answer to this is bitachon. The more a person has bitachon, the less he has to work. So much so that the Rambam in Hilchos Shmita ve'Yovel, Perek Yud Gimel, Halacha Yud Beis, and Halacha Yud Gimel, the Rambam says that if one wants to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu 100%, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will provide for him like he provides for the Levim who don't go to work. And then the Rambam gives him a title that he doesn't call anyone throughout the Yad HaChazaka, 14 big volumes. V'hareze niskadesh v'haya kodesh kodashim. A person who clings to HaKadosh Baruch Hu 24/7. Rambam calls him kodesh kodashim. So one is allowed to, but that has to do with the level of bitachon, and one is allowed to work on his bitachon. But regular people, they're out there, they're working. One can try and ascend in levels of bitachon, and the more he does so, the less time he has to spend working.
When Yaakov left the yeshiva of Sheva, We've no doubt Yaakov is on a much higher level of Bitachon
Right.
than anyone today. So, according to what the Rav just said, according to what was said in the name of Chazanish, Yaakov, perhaps he should have just focused on his tefillah, and Hashem would have sent him all he needed for his family. He didn't need to go out and spend all that time with sheep and lamb.
The way you addressed the Shaila, perhaps he should have, that means maybe there's a better way. It can't be. We have to understand how come Yaakov conducted himself the way he did. Good question. Maybe to teach us that if you are there working, learn from me, says Yaakov, and learn how to do it right. Don't steal, don't cheat. 1 second, don't sleep if you're guarding someone else's property, other people's money you have to attend to with tremendous responsibility. So he shows us again, the same person shows us the flip coin. On one hand, 100% Torah, when it comes to the fact that he had to work for whatever reason that he did have to, 100%. Maybe that was the condition with Lavan, said, forced him to work because he wanted Rachel, because in Ruach HaKodesh he saw that from Rachel Imenu and from Leah will come 12 tribes. So he has to be here and he has to work in order for you to be here today.
You also know with Yaakov, I mean, the Tanayim and Morayim, it's often, called like Yitzchak, Nafka. Wow, he works, I understand, as a blacksmith. I don't know how many.
So there's a tremendous machlokes the Rambam in Perek Daled in Pirkei Avos brings that one should not benefit from other people's money. He should work. Yegia kapecha ki toichel. Yafet Talmud Torah im together with the Eretz. You have to work. The Rambam says, I know everybody disagrees with me. The Rambam himself says, I know, but I'm going to tell you what I think. And Lemaise, we don't paskin like the Rambam. Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin like the Rambam. The Tashbet says we don't paskin like the Rambam. Mishnah Berurah goes very, very strong against those who want to go because of the Rambam's opinion and say, well, we have to go work. There you go. Moshe says one who wants to listen to the Rambam in this one, that's the advice of the Yetzer Hara. Because today it's not Shaykh like in yesteryears, like the Tanaim and the Amoraim and the Rambam maybe as well. Not Shaykh to be able to really to be a Talmid Chacham if you're doing both. That's the language of the Egos Moshe. So, Lemaise, Allah Lemaise, it's not Shaykh. In Mishlei Perek Yud Pasuk Rav Beis, the Pasuk says, Birkas Hashem Itash. The blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring riches. But the Pasuk continues. You said the first part. How does the Pasuk end? Velo Yosif Etzev Ima. And sadness, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't add anything. Which means this is a condition. If you want Birkas Hashem Itashir, if you want to become rich by the blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that means the condition is Velo Yosif Etzev Ima. Don't add any sadness to it. The blessing of Hashem only comes if you're besimcha. A chassid once came into the Leif Simcha. And he says to him, Rebbe, don't ask. The matzav in Parnassa is mamish terrible. Don't know what to do. So Leif Simcha told him, be besimcha. He says, Shkoyach, be besimcha. Do you know what I'm going through? Not shayach. How can I be besimcha? And the Rebbe says, no, what don't you do for Parnassa? Even if it's hard to be besimcha, but if the simcha brings Parnassa and it's going to bring you the heavenly blessing, what can you do? You even have to smile and you have to be besimcha. Because for Parnassa, people do crazy things. But Hasidim say that the greatest segula, I think last year we mentioned all kinds of segulos, but I don't think we mentioned this one because this is the greatest segula. I saved it for this year. Hasidim say the best segula for Parnassa is tshuva. What's the connection? Tshuva is very beautiful. It's great. But what's the connection to tshuva to Parnassa? In Yuma, before Yuma, Parashat Kisisa, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, Machzis HaShekel. The Medrash says, Moshe said, don't know what that looks like. Don't know what it's like. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He took out a coin, a gold coin, he showed him, he says, this is what I'm talking about. Where do you take it? Where do you take it from? From under Kisei HaKavod. And in Yuma Pei Vav, the Gemara says, Gedoy LeTshuva. Tshuva is so great. Shemagaas ad Kisei HaKavod. Tshuva takes you all the way to Kisei HaKavod, all the way to the heavenly throne. Well, apparently HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a basket there with a lot of gold coins. If you're already there by Tshuva that got you there, just take a few gold coins. Tshuva is the greatest for Parnassa. Tshuva is also the greatest for memory. What's the connection to memory? Gedoy LeTshuva Shemagaas ad Kisei HaKavod. Tshuva will take you all the way to the heavenly throne. And Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur davening, we say, "Ve'en shichecha lifnei chisech evoidecha." There's no forgetfulness when you're by the heavenly throne. By tshuva, you're going to get there. Over there, you don't forget. I once said that to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He cracked up laughing. So I don't know. Tshuva is good for everything. It's also a requirement. It also may be beneficial for Parnassa and to enhance our memory. In the time of the Chazon Ish, there was a printing place in Bnei Brak, the only printing place in Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak wasn't a big city back then. And surprisingly, it wasn't digital printing back then. So they actually had little letters that they put in the way they used to do it. One day, the guy who owned this place was named Shlomo Cohen. And one day, another guy comes and opens up another competing printing place right across the street. Chutzpah. This Shlomo Cohen goes over to the guy and says, "Oh, Shalom Aleichem. Want to wish you tremendous atzlacha, bracha v'atzlacha in your new endeavor." This is great. And says, "Listen, I have some extra spare letters that I don't need. Here, take them." And he starts telling him, "This is the best supplier in town, and this guy stay away from, and this guy do this." And then he came home, and his family says, "They don't understand." He says, "Maybe the fact that you didn't break his bones, okay, you're a tzaddik. But you come over and you say shkoyach and you give him mazel tov, that's very strange. But you also give him all the secrets of the trade. What were you thinking?" And he says to his family members, "What are you talking about? This guy, I owe him a lot. Did me such a big favor." He says, "What favor did he do to you? He's competing with you to take half of your clients." He says, "That's right. That's the favor that he did me. He's going to take half of my clients." He said, "Yeah, so what are you going to have me with? What's going to do with Parnassa?" He says, "What's the problem?" We said before in Beit Zayin. Parnassa is decreed in Rosh Hashanah. Parnassa he can't take from me. What he can take from me is the time that I'm going to have to spend with all those clients. That he took away. Great, I'm going to have more time to learn. So I owe him a bigger shekoyach. They said this maise to the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish said, this is not just a maise about a person who has emunah. This is a person who's mekayem kedushim tiyu. This is a person about kedusha. Kedusha and bitachon, where a person can ascend. What do you think? Mistama, got showered with more. There's a group in the States that they call themselves, I want to say this in the shul, the January group. That's what they call themselves. They come here every year. On Motzi Shabbos they leave New York. They land here Sunday. They go to all the rabbis, dead and alive. And they leave Thursday, they go back to the States. Once a year they come, in, according to their mistake, January, and they get spiritually charged. Great. So there was a group, this group came a bunch of years back to back, and they asked me every time to take them into Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Levocha. So we go in the first year, and they asked me to translate, they don't speak Hebrew, and one of the guys says, "Tell Reb Chaim that I learn half a day, and the other half I spend in business. I have great debts." So he wants to know, should I minimize the time that I spend learning, work a little more, be able to pay back my debts, and then I'll go back to my regular schedule, half a day learning. Reb Chaim says no. Reb Chaim says no. You listen. The following year, they come back and he asks me to ask Reb Chaim the same shara. He says just one detail changed. The debts are now bigger. So should I stop the learning, or at least minimize, spend more time in business? Reb Chaim says no. Reb Chaim says, do you really think HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs you to stop working in order to find you and send you a bigger check? Keep learning. Third year, they come back, same question, only one detail. Now the debt is even bigger. Reb Chaim says no. He listens. Fourth year, same question, same answer. Fifth year, he comes in, he says to me, take me to Reb Chaim. I want to say thank you. Why thank you? So he said, I listened to him. And for whatever reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided this year to open up Sha'arei Parnassa. I covered all my debts and I have some extra. Do you really think HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs you to stop learning? Only then, now I can provide him with a lot of Parnassa, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't provide the person who's learning. Avodah Zarah Daf Yutes, the Gemara says, Kol ha'oisek b'Torah nechasav matzlichin loy. If you learn Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you success and your assets will flourish. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need you to stop learning in order to provide. There's a Medrash Tanchuma in Tazriya Siman Chet. The Medrash says there was a Kohen who was very poor. And he decided he's leaving Eretz Yisrael. He heard that money grows on the trees in New York. So he's traveling to New York. He's just going to pick the bills, the $100 bills that obviously are growing there. You're from New York, is it true? It's still going on?
Definitely.
That's why you're here. So before he left, he tells his wife, listen, Rebbitzin, I'm a Kohen. I look at people's negaim, at their lesions, saras. When I leave, people may come here. Come, I'll teach you this art. And he teaches her the whole Torah, how it works. And this organ is influenced by this, and this is affected by this. And then when he comes to the hair, he explains to her that if you see the hair is dry, that means each hair has its own little pool, its own little spring that it gets its sustenance from. And that means it dried up. And then he wants to continue. She says to him, wait a second. Did you hear what you just said? You know, the average, how many hairs does a person have? Not me, I wrecked the average. Rabbi say, average. You know how many hairs does a person have? I think around 120,000, 150,000 hairs. You're saying, she says to him, each one of those hairs has its own spring that it gets its sustenance from. And you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can't take care of you? He can take care of 150,000 hairs on your head, and he can't take care of you. He listened to his wife. He stayed in Eretz Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu showered him with Parnassa. There was once a group, also from New York, that came, and they asked me to take them to Reb Nissim Karelitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Poisek Ador. So when we're traveling, they were telling me about the trip they did the previous day. They went to Kivrei Tzadikim, and especially they told me they went up north to the kever of Bichanina ben Doisa. Bichanina ben Doisa is buried up there, and they told me it's a big skula to daven for Parnassa, Dafka in his kever. And they were saying it's in a very hostile Arab village. And in fact, he said when we parked there, it was a very difficult time, like 10 years ago. So the tour guide told us, you have 30 seconds. Get out of the car, run to the kever, say whatever pasuk you can say, and come run back. It's dangerous here. So they were so excited, at this matzav. So I told them, you sure that halachically you were allowed to do this? He said, what do you mean? Davening for Parnassa. I said, we're going out to Reb Nissim Karelitz. Do you want a bracha or you want to ask a shayla? No, just a bracha. I said, just to go into Reb Nissim, poisek gadol, and not to use the time and ask a halachic shayla, it's bal tashchis. Mamish bal tashchis. Poisek gadol, you have an opportunity to ask, we don't have any questions. I said, yes you do. Come, I'll show you what questions you have. So we came inside, and I said to Reb Nissim, I told him the story, what they did yesterday, and I said, is there any heter to go to a kever of a tzaddik when you know it's dangerous to daven for Parnassa? So Reb Nissim tells me, you can daven for Parnassa also from here, from Bnei Brak. I said, yeah, I know, but they say it's a segulot for Parnassa. Nissim does like this. You can also daven from here, from Bnei Brak. So I told Reb Nissim, Rebbe, I believe it is a segulot. He looks at me, he says, really? I said, yeah, it's a segulot for pikuach nefesh. They're telling you it's a dangerous place. You think your prayer is not going to hear from somewhere else? So he laughed, he agreed with me. No. Rabbi said, listen, Shimon Rabbi said, there's a person who had a very difficult time with Parnassa. Very, very difficult. He worked for many, many different people in different industries. Nothing works. So he decided to go independent. He's opening up his own business. What did he do? He went to a very busy street and he had a sign. Hit me, kick me for 3 minutes and pay $10. He had a helmet on. He had protective gear for his heart and for his stomach. And he's standing there and he says, look, I really enjoy this. I overcome all my fears. Always were afraid. I was afraid to get hit. It brings me tremendous satisfaction, and I'm also earning some dollars. And apparently there's a lot of tzaddikim out there that want to help him overcome his fears. Yeah, people are tzaddikim. Maybe they come to get rid of all their frustrations in other areas in life. I know, but you have to judge people favorably. Mistama, they're tzaddikim. They just want to help him. One of his tzaddikim, after hitting him, he wanted to do mitzvahs behidir. You know, if I want to help Yanim, why 3 minutes? So he hit him for 5 minutes. He gave him extra few dollars. But after he finished hitting him, he says, you know, I'm not so sure that you're allowed to do this halachically. Choyver be'atzmoi. You're bruising yourself, you're hitting yourself. Who says you're allowed to do this? Giving other people permission to do this? You should check into it. He says, so how come you hit me before? He says, well, I saw a mitzvah, I wanted to do it. But lemaisa, I'm thinking about it now. It could be there's a shayla. So this guy comes now to Me'am Loez and asks, I have 2 shaylas. Am I allowed to do this? Can I give permission to someone else to hit me? And when I do give permission, is the other person allowed to hit me? He did. He put a helmet on. He has some protective gear for his heart. For his, I guess there's also a policy what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. I guess you're allowed to pull his ear, you're allowed to punch him in the shoulder. Nothing life in danger. His life is not a risk. We took care of. But are you allowed, Snam, to take a knife and to cut? You're not going to die. No. What's that? I'm sorry? No, Lois is going to do it because you heard somebody died and you're doing it for the dead person. But choyvel be'atzmo is an independent issue. You're not allowed to do this. So is this a problem or not?
Isn't this a bizayon against Bnei Adam who has the kavod of Hashem on him? Kick him, hit fist him. Bnei Adam has the kavod of Hashem on him.
But that we say about hanging a person. And that's why in Pashas Kisei the Torah says that if you do have to hang a person, you must take him off that day. But we don't find that by hitting a person. It's chutzpah. Maybe it's worse than chutzpah. There is a Gemara in Sanhedrin called "Soiter lo'o shel chavero kilu soiter lo yashchina," similar to what you're saying. But we don't find that that's the nature, that's the source of the issue. And that's the issue if you go and you do it to your friend, but when he gives you permission. He's doing it for Parnassa. You're a lawyer, you're a doctor, and he wants to be hit because that's how he earns his livelihood. He found it very difficult in other areas. People do crazy things with Parnassa. Boxing. You like it or not? You like this new business or no?
Doesn't say our place that the body doesn't really belong to us. It's only left to us. We don't have the right to cut damage.
You're allowed to pierce your ears to put earrings in your little daughter?
Yeah.
Why? Why is she allowed to do this?
Doesn't really take away.
You said it doesn't belong to you.
It belongs to use. It's a normal thing.
You're allowed to have a cosmetic surgery, which to you is extremely important. Why are you allowed to? It's not yours. Rabbi say, you like the new endeavor or no? You don't like it.
Maybe we can combine two ideas to get an answer. First of all, is somewhere, maybe in Tefillah Shas, where it speaks about how a person puts their life at risk climbing up a tree to harvest dates or whatever for Parnassa.
But Kama Kufyud base.
And I'm also thinking, I think there's a Tosafos in Gemara Rosh Hashanah where he describes how they celebrated weddings in the time of Tosafos.
They celebrated what?
A wedding.
Yeah.
Instead of having what we have today, making a person deaf by blasting your ears.
It's a Tosis in Sukkah, I think Sukkah Memhei.
Disco. What the Tosafos describes, Barbara used to ride each other.
The horses.
What we call jousting. And used to try and knock each other off the horse.
Right. Why? Simchas Chasuna.
No, but what Tosafos is discussing if a bottle injures another bottle in that, does he have to pay compensation? That's the discussion. So I understand from that, Tosafos is not saying this is not good practice and should not do it. The fact is constantly is focusing on the damage.
Very good.
So I was saying,
but let's say it never happens once in 1,000 times. This may happen. So Tosafos says, listen, you can do it because normally it's not going to happen, and because of Simcha you're allowed to. Tosafos is not saying that it happens every single time they do it. This, every single time the guy hits him, it's lichoiran isu. This is the nature of what he's requesting people to do.
So take the risk of climbing up a tree. That's also something that happens occasionally.
Good. That's great. To what degree? What degree of a risk are you willing to give him?
What about bringing up Marcos?
Malchus?
Getting lashes.
Malchus.
Can it be kapara? No.
That's when Beis Din decides to give you, because the Torah says one should get lashes, or makas mardus, that the Rabbanon decree, and that provides an atonement. But you can't decide to give malchus to other people.
There's a source that hitting a person is not, there's a room for it, meaning it can be done.
You know, there's an issue in the Torah called lo sirtzach. But when the Torah says tirtzach, and there is capital punishment for different ones in Beis Din, so you have to do it. The fact that Beis Din administers this punishment, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to, that's an atonement for the person who's a sinner. But who says a person who's a tzaddik is allowed to do this? We're assuming this guy's a tzaddik. Machloikes in Baba Kama Daf Tzadi Aleph Amud Beis, whether a person is allowed to be choivel be'atzmo or not. The two, Choshen Mishpat Simen Taf Chaf, brings the two opinions. Most Rishonim hold that one is not allowed to be choivel be'atzmo. But the Rama, not Rema, not Moshe Israel Shudan Aleph, Reish Mem Hey. And that is Rabbi Meir ben Tudrus Halevi Abulafia, about 900 years ago, one of the Rishonim. He holds one is allowed to be choivel be'atzmo. Lemaise Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat Simen Taf Chaf. Seif Lamed Aleph rules one is not allowed to be choivel be'atzmo, but if he does so, he is patur. The Sdei Chemed brings the Ralbach that if a person says to his friend, hit me, and don't worry, you're going to be patur, then for sure he is patur. Everybody would agree. Both opinions will agree he is patur. And he says, and I think that he's even allowed to do so lechatchila. It's not a ptur b'di'evet, he would be allowed to do so lechatchila. And he brings a remez from that the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes that who transgresses, don't hit a person. If a person hits an Adam Kasher, derech nitzion, that means when they were fighting, he decided to hit him, then he's transgressing this law. Meaning, if it's not derech nitzion, it's not when they're fighting, I gave you permission. This is my business. Lichoirab, it would be allowed. The Minchas Chinuch writes this as well, that if you give permission to someone else, it helps. And then he says an unbelievable chiddush. Even if parents give permission to their kid to hit them, the kid would be allowed to be choivel in his parents. Tremendous chiddush. But the Sdei Chemed, who brought this Ralbach, wonders about this Ralbach. Because the Sefer Hasidim seems to imply in Siman Taf Reish Ayin Vav that this Isuan isn't deoraisa. So he says, if you're not allowed to be choivel be'atzmo yourself, how can you give permission to others to do it to you? So it must be that the Ralbach says choivel is one thing and hitting is another. The Sdei Chemed says, he brings Shas Juvis Harivash, again, one of the Rishonim, that even though that we say one can be moichel his tsar, but that's tsar haguf, but he still will be chayav to pay him. This works well for us because the guy is paying him $10 for every 3 minutes that he's hitting him. But this is benu b'diavad lechatchila. He is not allowed to do so, and he will be transgressing Bal Yosef. Lo Yosef is the source of choivel be'atzmo that you're not allowed to hit a person. The Radbaz says, when a person says, there's no witnesses, and he comes and says, yes, I killed. Yes, I did something else that he has to get either malchus or he has to get capital punishment. We do not do anything to him. Why? Why is it that we don't say, Hoidas Baal Din Kemea Eidim? That we do say about monetary issues. Why don't we say it? Because even though one's money belongs to him, his body does not. His nefesh doesn't belong to him. And that's the reason, that's the source for this issue of Chabala. Because even when you give permission for someone else to hit you, but no one has permission over his own body because the body is not yours, like you said. The body belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shulchan Aruch Harav says the same thing. But a person is allowed to be choivel be'atzmo when there is a need. For example, refuah. And that's why you're allowed to perform all kinds of surgeries, to have surgeries done on you because it's letzorich. The Ramban writes, tremendous chiddush. Parshas Mishpatim, the Torah says, Verapo yerape, he shall surely heal. The Gemara learns from here, from here, there is permission to the doctor to heal. And why wouldn't the doctor have any permission? Why not? Says the Ramban. Ramban was a doctor, he knows. The Ramban says the body works in synergy. And when you administer a medicine, some kind of a pill for some part of your body, it may affect and probably will, and many times it does, affect in a negative way another part of your body. What's good for your arm is not necessarily good for your brain, or vice versa. So, since you're trying to heal one body, which is very important to you, the Torah gave you permission, even though the Torah knows that this will be damaging to another part of your body. That's what it means. Mikan sheyesh reshus laroife lerapois. There's permission to the doctors to heal, even though the doctor knows there's going to be damaging in another area of your body. I once asked.
That's why he says rapoli.
That's the double language, right? Oh, today's Pehei Mudalef. Gewaldig.
So the master would sound like it's the Torah that's over here.
We'll see. I once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. There's a guy who, he passed away by now. He had cancer for many years. He struggled with cancer, and he had multiple surgeries. One day he took his shirt off, and his kid sees him. He says, "Abba, you have a scar in the shape of a cross on your back. I don't think you're allowed to have that." So the guy was asking a few questions. First of all, do I have to have some kind of ishtadlus to try and remove it? Midas Chasidus, should I ask the doctors to create another scar, a different shape? And how are you going to do that? You're going to have to take out more blood. You have to do another Chabala. I asked him also, there's a Baal Tshuva, who in the past had a tattoo of a cross. Now he became Baal Tshuva. Should he remove it? Cost a lot of money. It's painful. Chabala, chovel be'atzmo. Right now, it has nothing to do with this thing in the past, but Lemais, it's on his body. Reb Chaim told me, if you have any reason to, we don't say chovel be'atzmo. This issue is lifted when there is a need. For whatever reason it's bothering you, you're allowed to. So does a person have permission to give permission to others to hit him? Can the other guy hit him when he gets permission? When it's Parnassa, is Parnassa considered l'tzoyrech like refuah?
We have an answer from a few parshas a few weeks ago. Moshe Rabbeinu saw Dasan Revilon, they were fighting with each other. Moshe Rabbeinu says, wicked person, why do you call him wicked, raising his hands against another person? Now surely, Moshe Rabbeinu knew all the Torah before it was given. So if it was the heter, maybe he could have thought that Dasan Revilon had made it kind of a...
Where's the heter? The other guy didn't say, please hit me.
No, but maybe when he saw them fighting, he would have jumped the capital loose and realised he's doing this because he made such an agreement. The fact that...
Since he didn't have a sign saying, this is my business, hit me for 10 minutes, hit me for 3 minutes, there's no kav schus. When you see two people fighting, separate between them. We don't like fighting.
It's the same shayla whether you're allowed to be a boxer or not.
Similar. Very similar. We'll see soon. Before we answer, we ask another question.
The Yaakov and the Parnassa. So he went to search for gold, and it was hit. So could be some sort of deeper meaning in that.
Vayivasa Yaakov levado, because he was alone. He stayed alone. That's the taina we said a few weeks in Parashat Vayishlach. That's the taina on the brothers, on the sons, on the Shiftei Ka. Why did you leave your father alone? And because of that, some of the Rishonim say, that's why you're not allowed to eat a Gida Nasha, and this will always remind you to escort your father, to escort someone, not to keep him by himself, because he may be hurt.
See that when they advertise in the area like karate lessons for children, so they put, the self-esteem or,
They should do self-esteem, parentheses, also chovel be'atzmo, potentially, according to some opinions. So we'll see. He said boxing. Let's see. But before we answer, let's ask another question. There's a medical study. They need people, and it's dangerous, but they're paying money. Can you volunteer for the job? You're going to be compensated. Can you volunteer? But it's dangerous. Are you allowed to or not? It's very similar. It's Parnassa.
So it's a medical study that the person doesn't need.
I don't need it. I don't care about it. I saw an ad in the paper.
No, because there's sometimes medical study don't try as a medicine because it's something.
Parnassa.
What's the level of risk? The probability of being injured.
How many zeros?
6.78. 25%. 49%. 82.6.
So it's a reasonable chance.
In some of them there is. 82 is pretty high.
Yeah. So I wouldn't
You say no heter.
It's allowed to help future people, they know what to do.
Who says it's going to help? Maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it's not going to work.
What, you go into the army?
I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for me. Parnassa.
Go into the army?
Do you have a heter to go to the army? Not here. Not here in Poland.
In Poland?
You live in Poland, in Russia. And they're offering you money. The Imreyesh asks your question. The Imreyesh in Yoredeh, Simon Chav Beis, Nun Beis says, I wonder, in Poland and other countries, in a time of war, when they need soldiers, they offer people money and people run into the army. Are Jews allowed to do this? And he wants to say, yes, for two reasons. He brings David HaMelech. David HaMelech fought a lot. But not only Milchemes Mitzvah, also Milchemes Rishus, because he wanted to conquer more area and to increase the size of Eretz Yisrael. Wasn't he choshesh tu v'nishmartem me'od lenafsho yisechem? Watch yourselves exceedingly. Why wasn't he choshesh? He says, go look in Tosfos and Masechet Shavuos. He apparently means Shavuos Lamed Hei Amud Beis, where the Gemara over there says that if the king goes to war, I'm talking about Milchemes Rishus, not Milchemes Mitzvah, and 1/6 of his soldiers die, he will not be punished from Shemayim. Up to 1/6. More than that, he will be punished from Shemayim. Meaning, it is only natural. It's the nature of the beast. That's how wars are fought. People do die. And up to 1/6, we're accepting this. This is fine. And we find in the Melachim, the kings of the Chashmonaim, that they also went to war. Milchemes Reshus. And no problem, they went to war. People will die. And it's not considered that as if you're committing suicide. Also, Maseches Gitin, and even at the time of Beis Hamikdash Sheni by Chashmonaim, there was no Urim V'Tumim. Normally, in order to go to war, you ask. You punch the keys on the Urim V'Tumim. Should I go to war or not? Will I be successful? And the Urim V'Tumim say yes or no. But in Beis Sheni, there were no Urim V'Tumim, and yet they went to war. You see it's allowed. You're endangering yourself. For what? For Parnassa. At Milchemes Reshus, they just wanted to have more Parnassa. They wanted to conquer more land. They wanted to get more money. You need Urim V'Tumim to go to war. There is no Urim V'Tumim in the time of second Beis Hamikdash. And he brings another raya, much later than that, in Maseches Gitin Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Reish Lakish. Everybody knows Reish Lakish. But what did Reish Lakish do just a little before he became Reish Lakish? He's a bandit. Head of the gangsters. At one point he sold himself to Ludim. But what type of a nation were these Ludim? Cannibals. Excuse me? You're not afraid? He sold himself. That means he did it for Parnassa. And somehow, some kind of a trick that he did, Baruch Hashem, he was saved. Who is about you?
Oh, so the Tosfos say, this must be that he did it before he was a Baal Tshuva. Because otherwise, he wouldn't be mezalzel in himself. He wouldn't degrade himself so much. The Tosfos doesn't say, because otherwise, it's an issue. He would know better. No. That means it's allowed to do. It's just not very nice. You see a raya from here that you're allowed to do this halachically. It's not very nice, especially if your name is Reish Lakish. But you see that you're allowed to. So lichoira.
It doesn't make sense. A person is allowed to sell himself to cannibals?
Yeah, he probably thought he's going. Not cannibals that promising we're going to eat you up tomorrow. This is a danger. In other words, he puts himself in danger. You know, Mistama, he sold himself to them right after they had lunch, a big lunch. So they're good for a little while. He probably figured, I'll take the money and I'll run. There was a danger element to it, but not that he mamish wanted to commit suicide. You see from here, it's allowed to. So you see from here that lichoira, the level, and that answers your question from before, up to what degree, according to the Imreyesh, bringing the Gemara, that talks about the king who's allowed to endanger his soldiers, up to 1/6. That's the level of danger that one is lichoira is allowed to go into. Noida Bihuda, a famous shaila in Madura Tinyana Yoredeh Simin Yud, a person asked him, I like hunting. Am I allowed to hunt? The question was, the guy who was asking the question asked him because of Sar Ba'alei Chaim, because of Baal Tashchis. So the Noida Bihuda surprises the person who asked, and he says, Sar Ba'alei Chaim, Baal Tashchis, there's no problem. I have a different problem with your shaila, but I don't have a problem with that. Because anytime there is a tzorech, there is a need, you're benefiting, there you don't say Baal Tashchis. What's the raya? Why are you wearing a leather belt, leather shoes? How come your wife is wearing a fur coat? Why do you have a leather bag? Because anytime you're benefiting, we don't say Tzar Ba'alei Chaim and we don't say Baal Tashchis. I don't have a problem with that.
But I do have a problem is, two things, says the Noida Yehuda. First of all, what about Racham Aval Kol Ma'asav? He wanted to go as a hobby. I like hunting. I don't need it for Parnassa. I don't want to eat. I just enjoy killing animals. What about Racham Aval Kol Ma'asav? You're supposed to emulate Ribbon Shalom and walk in his ways. He is merciful and compassionate upon all his creatures. You should be the same. But he says, I have another problem. You're endangering yourself. How are you going to hunt? You're going to go to the forest. It's dangerous. And the greatest raya is the greatest hunter ever. What was his name? Esau. The Torah testifies. Ish Sadeh. Vayi Esau Ish Yodei Tzayid Ish Sadeh. That means he was the number one. He was the expert. There's no one like him as a champion. And yet he said about himself, Anoichi holech lamus, I'm about to die. We normally understand, I'm so tired. That's not what the Ramban says. And the Ramban says, meaning he was very, very in a dangerous place because every single day he would go to the forest and he would hunt. It's a dangerous type of Parnassa that you found. So he says, the Noida Yehuda, how, if it's just for fun, do you want to go into a place which is dangerous? If you're doing it for Parnassa, we saw a heter. But if you're doing it stam, the Torah says, and he risks his life for it. That means for Parnassa you have a heter, not for other things. And Chazal say what you said before about Mitzia, Kuf Yud Beis, that one is allowed to walk, to climb the scaffolding or to climb a tree. For Parnassa you're allowed to. But when you're not doing it for Parnassa, who gave you a heter? And therefore you see from the Noida Yehuda that you're allowed to participate in this study because it's for refuah. And if you're doing it for Parnassa, then you're allowed to. But for other things, lichora not. Igros Moshe. I don't understand this Igros Moshe, practically what he's talking about, but I understand the Shaila. Choshen Mishpat Chelek Aleph Simen Kuf Dalet. He is asked, is one allowed to get Parnassa from a sport called Bal, Beis Aleph Lamed, which means a ball. He writes in Hebrew. And it's dangerous. A remote danger that you can die. I don't know what sport he's talking about. They're using a ball that you can die. But when was the last time you heard, maybe rugby, maybe, but he was in America, maybe somebody sent from Australia, I don't know. When was the last time you heard that a person died in baseball? I don't know, I don't think so. He's talking about, otherwise he would say this common, he says there is a game called Bet Aleph Lamed, Baal Belaz. So he writes, because of Bab Metzia Kuf Yud Beis, because a person is allowed to climb and endanger himself, going on the tree, going on the scaffolding, one will be allowed because the danger here is remote. So he says, and with that, when you're allowed to, you're also allowed to endanger others. Because why are they playing with you? And this would answer the question from before about boxing. You see, if we go into the ring together and we both agree, I may be hit, I may hit you, then if you agree and you know there's a remote danger, one will be allowed. So lichoira, we should say the same thing. If this guy is giving reshus to the others for a purpose of Parnassa, one will be allowed to, he is allowed to give reshus to others, and they will be allowed to hit him.
What if one kills another in the ring by doing boxing?
If he's a Kohen, he won't be able to duchen. If he's a Kohen, Shulchan Aruch Chaim Simen Kuf Kaf Ches, he will not be able to do duchening again. What's that? Lichoire, it's as if they went into the ring saying, Hakeni al menas lifto. Hit me, but you're going to be patur. But we're going to have some serious questions. Not we. Upstairs, they're going to have some serious questions, I think, to this guy. Why did you pick this practice from all practices in the world?
There's more violent sports than boxing.
Like?
I don't know. There's Thailand.
So the Igros Moshe is talking about this sport that there is a very remote danger, and he says yes. I guess like we said before, is if up to a 6, yes. More than that, you don't have a heter. So you have to assess what the level of the risk is, the danger, and then based on that, we'll decide.
There was, I don't know, because was not in case he wanted to hunt the fox or something like this.
He's saying the hunting that you're involved in is dangerous. Who gave you permission to danger yourself? And he gives a raya from Esav. Esav was a hunter, and Esav says, I'm about to die. In other words, I'm putting myself in danger.
Yeah, but hunting the tiger is one thing. Hunting the fox is a different level of danger.
If you will find a way of hunting without any danger, then Noida Yehuda is not talking about it. Then he'll have a problem from a different aspect of where is your rachamim, v'racham aval kol ma'asav. But he was talking about a case that I guess in yesteryears that type of hunting was dangerous.
We say.
Talks about the ball game and what he scored, and one equivalent is the ball against the wall and it bounces back. And the problems where they.
So based on what we're saying, we'll assess it. If it's up to a 6, 1/6, you're good to go. More than that, stay away, find yourself something else. Play golf.
saying, though, that we can take a certain amount of risk in order for Parnassa. How can I understand? Said in the name of Chaim, I've heard it a number of times, he's supposed to have said, if a motor car would have existed in the time of the Gemara,
The stipler.
the stipler, they would have banned it. It would have been banned. But we know, like most people travelling in the car today, they are serious accidents, that's some people get injured, but most journeys do not end in an accident. So how do you understand that?
First of all, this is not a psak halacha. He said, I guess trying to give a message to people, be careful. The way you're driving like a Michigan. He said that if there was a Sanhedrin at the time when there were cars, they would say only police officers, fire department, first aid, doctors, they will be allowed. People go into the car, drive like crazy people. I guess he was sending a message. It wasn't a psak halacha. The pasuk says, Ki ani Hashem rofecha. Let's talk about refuah. The stipler and Moshe, the Igos Moshe once met. So the Igos Moshe asks the Satmar Rebbe and Moshe once met. The Igos Moshe asks the Satmar Rebbe, people come to you with a kvittel, they write a name on refuah, and you wish them refuah shleima. Why can't you just say refuah? What's refuah shleima? So the Satmar says to Moshe, you're a Rav. Can you explain to me what you say in Davening? Nusach Sfar, they say, we ask for geula shleima. Why not geula? So Moshe says, we already had geula once. And then again we went into exile. We asked that there will be a geula shleima, that will never Chalila have to go to Galus again. That's it, finished. The last redemption, and everything is fine after that. So the Satmar Rebbe, you understand now why I say geula shleima? You can be healed from this one, and chas v'shalom next week catch something else. So I'm wishing the guy is going to be refuah shleima, should be healed from this and never be sick again. I think with that we can understand also what we say in Davening. Hashivenu b'tshuva shleima. Today about tshuva. Well, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? So I want that this tshuva will be a tshuva shleima, will be able to be consistent. Also, as we said before, sometimes, since the body works in synergy, when you take something, it's going to heal one part of you, but it may affect negatively another part. So we ask that a refuah should be a refuah sheleima, that nothing of the body will be affected negatively from the refuah that you will have. Rabbi Yisai, the riddle of the week. We're going to read Parshas Haman today, tomorrow. Can it be? It's not Parshas Beshalach. And they will read it in the shul, Parshas Haman, not as a tashlumi, not next week. 3 months from now, 2 months ago. Parshas Haman, you take out a Sefer Torah in the shul and you read. Can it be? 3 points. Not everybody together. I can't hear when you're yelling at me. One by one. What's that? Parshas Haman for rain? That's a chiddush. You have a source for that?
No.
I'm not familiar with one either.
Say the question again.
Tomorrow you're going to read Parshas Haman? Can it be that you'll read Parshas Haman in shul? B'tzibu? But not in Parshas Beshalach. And not the following week because you forgot last week. In 3 months from now. 2 months ago. Can it be? You can say no, but you'll be wrong.
I don't know, the government would say 80% tax or something, or some kind of a huge gizera.
If it's 79, no, only 80% and up?
I don't know, I'm just saying. If there is
You have a source? You have a source? You have a source? Do you have a source?
I'm just guessing.
I like the guess, but I need a source. Kriya b'tzibu.
Maybe if there's poverty and there's no food around.
That's what he's saying, the taxation. You have a source for that? It's a tremendous chiddush. I also don't have one. Sefer Ha'itim. Great chiddush. He says when you don't know what parsha to read, stuck somewhere, desert island, you got stuck, you don't know what week this is, but you have a Sefer Torah. You take out the Sefer Torah and you read Parshas Haman. Because Shabbos is mentioned in Parshas Haman. Chiddush, we find Shabbos in many other parshas in the Torah. But Sefer Ha'itim decided, and in a case like that, you will read Parshas Haman b'tzibu. Tremendous chiddush. Rabbi Yisai.
What following week? You feel you're in the island.
You don't know, you read Parshas Haman. Whenever in doubt, Parshas Haman.
52 weeks here.
Why not? 53, 55, it's a leap year. Vayikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imo. Whom did Moshe take along? Whose bones did Moshe take? Yosef. Who else? Did he take anyone else with him?
What about all the other brothers?
He's answering you. He says, the Rashi says the other Shvatim. Anyone else? Medrash Chemdas Hayamim. Es. Oh, what does it es do? The word es in the Torah always comes to be merabit, to increase, to add. Es lerabois. The bones of Basya, whose name is really Bitya. He took her bones along with. It's a tremendous chiddush. Why is it tremendous chiddush? What do Chazal say about Basya? She walked straight into Gan Eden alive. So he deals with it. I don't understand what he says. But he says, and if you're going to ask me, she walked straight into Gan Eden. I'll answer you. It means she walked into Gan Eden beguf dak. Big question mark. Don't understand what that means. You have to understand there's some levels. I don't think there are actually human bodies in Gan Eden. There are no human bodies there. It's a spiritual existence. So Mistami is trying to say that the bones he did take, but somehow bederech min hadrachim beofen min haofanim, she walked into Gan Eden, and yet her bones were carried by Moshe.
What about Aaron?
What about him?
The ones that were taken alive.
Moshe didn't take his bones.
So
that the Chassam Sofer already answers.
Bodies are not here.
The pasuk in the Navi says that he went up in a storm hashamayma. Allah b'sara hashamayma. The Chassam Sofer says Eliyahu Novi parks his body. He moves up a little. I don't know to what high, how high. He parks his body, and then his soul continues, and he goes up to the Gan Eden. Then when he needs his body to come down to appear to us, he comes down, goes into the body, comes down, and he appears to you and me, Mistama, many times, to you, not to me. And then he parks his body before he walks in. It's different levels there, 7 heavens.
What about all the other sons?
What about them?
What their bones also brought?
He answered you. Rashi says he took the other bones of the Shvatim as well.
Why is only Yosef mentioned?
Because Yosef asked for it. Yashbia. Rabbi said there's a Rosh Yeshiva, his name is Rabbi Yitzchak. We're finishing with this Maaseh. This Rabbi Yitzchak is up north, and he has a great yeshiva, and every so often he has to come to Yerushalayim, to Misrad HaPnim, to take care of all kinds of matters, to get a permit for this, to get a certificate for this, and there's a secretary there, very, very secular, but she has a very warm heart towards Yiddishkeit, and she helps him with everything he needs. So every so often he travels all the way from up north, it takes him 3 hours, he gets to Yerushalayim, and he did that. He came to Yerushalayim, he goes to the office, and he sees that the secretary is not there. So he felt terrible. That means I have to come back in another week or 2 weeks. It's such a waste of time, 3 hours each direction. But the secretary right next to her says, no, don't worry. She's here today. She just stepped into the other room to daven. She's where she went with a few friends. Looks at his watch, 12:05. It's a little too late for Shachis. It's a little too early for Mincha. That's strange. Okay, he figures how long can it take her? Another 5-10 minutes. He waits 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes, she's not back. He says, this is strange. Oh, she was secular. Maybe she became Baal Tshuva. She has to do Tashlumi now. For all her davening, it's going to take 2 years. So he figured, let me go in. So he goes into the other room. He sees the strangest thing. These 3 ladies are sitting there. They're reading Megillah Esther. And he looks at them, and she looks at him and says, oh, Rabbi Yitzchak, it's so good that you came. Maybe you can help us. It's very long, this Megillah, and there's so many words that I'm not familiar with. It's hard for me to read. Maybe you can read it to us. He says to her, why are you reading Megillah Esther? It's 9th of Shvat. It's a Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Why are you reading Megillah Esther? She says to him, what, you don't know this minhag? What minhag? He says, it's a minhag. No, last night I went to a shir, and the Rebbitzin says there's a Segulot for Parnassa. He says, what Megillah says? What's Segulot for Parnassa? He says, why don't you know? If there's Segullah to learn to read the Parsha Saman in the week of Parshas Beshalach. Isn't this Parshas Beshalach this week? He says to her, yeah. She says, don't you know? Parsha Saman, I'm reading all about Haman Achashverosh. So apparently some people read Parsha Saman in Parshas Beshalach, some people read Parsha Saman of Haman and Achashverosh, but it doesn't make a difference. Echad hamarbe ve'echad hamamit uvilvad sheyechaven eslivo le'aviv shebashamayim. In Mitzvah Hashem, we should all be showered with tremendous Parnassa. We started the month of Shevat. We're in the middle of the Shevat. Shevat is still Mitzvah Hashem. Shefa besoyros toivos to all of us. Shevat is also Shomrem, Barchem, Taharem. We should all be guarded. We should all be blessed. We should all be purified in Mitzvah Hashem. It's 111 days. Achenu kol beis Yisrael anesunim. Batzara uvashivya 111 days. Ha'oimdim ben bayam uven bayabasha uven mitachas layabasha endatam lo zamakom yirachem aleim. ויוציא מצר ולבוכם אפילו לא יראו משובד לגולה השתו בעגולו וזמן קורי ואינו ימר אמן